Hi everyone, I'm Cinders and Ashes UK, but you can just call me Cinder. Thomas and Friends is no stranger to including rivalries in its series. These character dynamics serve many purposes, from showing us a side of the characters that we might not have seen otherwise, or to reinforce the morals and lessons of the stories. There have been tons of these character dynamics within the show, and I've always found them incredibly fascinating and especially entertaining. So today, I'm going to share with you all my 5 favourite rivalries within the show. Of course, this is all based on my opinions and preferences, so be sure to let me know what your favourites are, and be sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Now let's get into it. Number 5. Percy and Harold. This is a nice spin on the rivalry between Thomas and Bertie, but the dynamic between Percy and Harold has some nice differences. It shows us the sort of things that can get under Percy's skin, yet the two do become firm friends after their race. They often throw shade at each other, but it never feels malicious or hurtful. Instead, they're just two friends that like to wind each other up. For example,
Harold told me you were a wizard. He says he can beat you at some things, but not at being a submarine.
Hello, Lazy Wings. Are you too tired to fly today?
The wind's too strong. I've been grounded,
grumbled Harold. You need rails, laughed Percy. They work wonders, you know. Always.
Maybe we should take the mailbags a few at a time, said his pilot. They're very heavy.
I'd have to make too many trips. Then I'd be as slow as Percy.
Fancy taking the mail, Harold? Percy teased. I'll stand by with the rescue team.
But they will also not hesitate to help one another out of a pinch, as seen in Percy's promise and A Bad Day for Harold the Helicopter. Number 4. Toby and James. This is the typical rivalry where you can see one character who's clearly in the wrong and one who's clearly in the right. But what I love about the relationship between these two is how Toby doesn't let James get to him, similar to Edward versus Gordon. But the difference here is that it brings out another side to Toby. Toby is an old soul with a young heart, which can be seen as he does throw around the odd joke. So when another engine like James or even Mavis acts like an idiot and gets their comeuppance, you can be sure that he'll be quick to make a witty comment.
I am a splendid engine, answered James. Ready for anything. You never see my paint dirty. Oh, said Toby innocently. That's why you once needed bootlaces, to be ready, I suppose.
But despite that, it's never to the point where it feels nasty or slanderous, which just makes Toby that much more endearing to me. Number 3. Percy and James. James has had a ton of rivalries, and this one is easily my favourite. This one sadly only lasted for one episode, that being Percy, James and the Fruitful Day, which is a shame because this one had a great deal of potential. These two bounce off each other so well. It starts off much like James's rivalry with Toby, where he acts like an ass to Percy and later gets his comeuppance. But unlike Toby making a little joke and leaving it at that, Percy rubs it in James's face to the point of being cocky and arrogant himself, which ultimately comes back to bite him in the ass. It's a rather unique rivalry because neither party is fully in the right, and it shows the audience the flaws held within both characters. Number 2. Thomas and Gordon. This isn't one of the all-time best rivalries within the show, but it is a classic, and it's the very first one of the show. Much like the previous entry, it shows what happens when two flawed characters clash. Something else that makes me really like this rivalry in particular is how it actually comes to a satisfying end, at least in the classic series. After Thomas and Gordon get their biggest comeuppances yet, they decided to band together and form an alliance, meaning that they now agree to look out for one another, which they do in Paint Pots and Queens, where they both get a chance at redemption, more so Gordon than Thomas though. Honestly, I think the Rivalry series might have done that last bit better. Either way, this is a classic rivalry that everyone and their mothers remember, and is always entertaining to watch. Before we get into number 1, here are some quick honourable mentions. Duncan and Rusty. This is more of a general character dynamic as opposed to an actual rivalry, hence why it's not on the list, but I still love it as it really highlights the gruff and rough side of Duncan, which I love. He hands down has the most personality out of all the narrow gauge engines. Duncan and James. I'm not the biggest fan of the hit era, but the episode Duncan's Bluff effectively builds on the tension between the two characters, that we only briefly saw in season 4. Not to mention it hints towards James's determination that was sadly lost after season 1. Edward and Gordon. This one is a classic. It's always so good to see how Edward doesn't let the big engine's words get to him, and put Gordon in his place. Edward and James. I like this one for the same reason I like the last one. Seeing Edward put a younger, more arrogant engine in their place is just so satisfying. And not letting their words get to him, as well as not hesitating to help them in times of need, just shows off what a great character Edward is. Thomas and Bertie. This one is both classic and fun. Everyone remembers the episode where Thomas and Bertie met for the first time and had a race. It's a classic episode that kick-started a friendly rivalry that has continued to be pushed ever since its introduction so long ago. Number 1. Thomas and Diesel? Nah. Sorry to anyone who is a fan of the hit era or CGI series, but I'm just not a fan of the rivalry between Thomas and Diesel. I admit that it seems to make sense when you make the most notorious antagonist of the series a rival to the main character, but only on paper does it actually work for these two. The show by this point pandered too much to little kids, and thus the dynamic between these two felt more like childish squabbles than anything else. This is where Diesel's original rivalry shines, a rivalry with Duck. The tension between these two in the second season is unmatched. This rivalry does so much for both characters. It shows us just how sly and devious Diesel actually is, as seen in Dirty Work when he manipulated both the trucks and the engines just to get Duck sent away, in comparison to some later seasons that just turned him into a boastful bully. Furthermore, it also highlights what I consider to be Duck's best character trait, his intolerance for bullying. After Diesel gets his comeuppance in his debut, Duck does laugh it up and gives Diesel a taste of his own medicine. But unlike Duck, the troublesome trucks effectively bully him for a long time afterwards. Yet despite the tension between the two, Duck still stands up for Diesel, much like he did with Percy against the big engines.
Diesel, the new engine, was sulking. The trucks would not stop singing rudely at him. Duck was horrified. "Shut up!" he ordered and bumped them hard. "I'm sorry our trucks were rude to you, Diesel."
And that right there is a rivalry done right. It highlights the most noteworthy traits in both characters, the good in Duck and the bad in Diesel. Hell, it was done so well that when Diesel came back in Season 3, the tension between them was instantly reignited and only thickened with Percy being thrown into the mix. I could go on and on, but I think I've made my point as to why Duck and Diesel have the best rivalry in the entire series. Well, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed this list, and be sure to stick around if you did, as I've got a ton more that I'd like to cover, as well as several discussion videos and even some Tugs content planned. Let me know if you have any ideas for future topics, and until next time, with peace and love, I'll see you guys later.